I'm Monica Call with Discover Magazine. With me today is renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. Today we're going to be discussing Neil's latest book, Starry Messenger, along with the science behind science fiction. Neil, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking with you too. So, to dive right in, your role as a science communicator often touches on the intersection and overlap between science and science fiction. What sci fi stories, either in books or movies or TV, made an impact on you growing up? Did you have any personal favorites?
Yeah, I did. So I was much more of a moviegoer than novel reader.
Mhm.
So many of my colleagues have these huge sci-fi libraries, and they can point to bits and pieces and storylines that influence them. For me, it was all through movies. So,
Mhm.
and I'm old enough. How old I am? I'm just an old fart. I'm old enough to remember 2001: A Space Odyssey in its first run. And
Mhm.
that film, which is still talked about today, is I recently learned, like weeks ago, what Stanley Kubrick, the director, said of his own film. And I said, "Yeah, why didn't you tell me that 50 years ago?" Okay. So he said, this film is not to be watched, but to be experienced.
Okay.
And I said, "Yeah, okay. Now I don't have to try to figure out all the weird, wacky stuff that happened in it, but to experience it is to be in a space shuttle docking with a rotating space station with a Strauss waltz playing in the background. These are
Mhm.
moments, to encounter signs of alien life with the uh, also Sprach Zarathustra um, music. And so to see it, to hear it, to feel it, that was many of us is what we said, yeah, space, of course. That's
Mhm.
tomorrow. Let's do it. Let's do it now. And that movie came
Yeah.
out a year before we landed on the moon. So movies can have a way of setting a tone for subsequent conversations, subsequent dreams, even subsequent goals of of a nation. And
Mhm.
so that one I would say above all else, put my mind, body, and soul into the future of space.
Nice. It is a good one. So stemming off from fiction, are there any like real life influences that inspired your love for science?
Uh, I mean, my answer there is quite boring. It's the universe itself.
I
That's
think
a
that's a
real life.
beautiful answer.
Does that count? Can I count that as a real life
Yeah, I think
influence? Yeah.
so.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
just as a kid looking up first through binoculars and seeing the moon, you know, think about it. You walk around and the moon is just up there. All right.
Mhm.
And it goes through phases and fine. But if you look at the moon through good binoculars or even through a simple telescope, oh my gosh, it's not just this thing in the sky. It's a world with
Mhm.
mountains and valleys and craters and shadows and gullies and all of a sudden the moon goes from just this object that you ignored most of your life to a place you say, "Hey, I want to visit that. I want to know more about what's in the universe." And
Mhm.
a first visit to my local planetarium when I was 9, that was another encounter with the cosmos. And I'm pretty sure I was starstruck in that moment that maybe the universe chose me instead of
Oh,
vice
yeah.
versa, because
Mhm.
I was moved and focused thenceforth. And by age 11, then I knew the word that applied to what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that's astrophysicist. So
Mhm.
then I had a word for that annoying question that adults always ask kids. What's that question?
What do you wanna be when you grow up?
And I would answer an astrophysicist. And that pretty much shut them all up. Like there was no comeback on that. Oh, Aunt Matilda's an no, she's not. No, Uncle Joe, no, not. They usually try to find some way to connect to you to continue the conversation, but those
Mhm.
conversations ended pretty quickly. But that was fine. I was in my own little nerd universe.
Mhm. Perfect. Well, speaking of the moon, how excited are you about the recent announcement of the crew for the Artemis 2 mission?
Well, there's a limit to how excited I can get, given that we should have been doing this 45 years ago. so,
Mhm.
so, you know,
Agreed.
we were on the moon through 1972. And so, and now we're not on the moon for 50 years. And now you want me to get excited. So, no, I'm not excited. It's like, it's about damn time. That's, does that count as being excited? I don't know.
I
That's
I
more,
think so in a
that's
way,
a
yeah.
happy frustration. How about that? There's no word for that? I'm happily frustrated that we're going back eventually, that we eventually are going back.
Mhm,
And by the way, the time between Artemis 1, which was uncrewed, and Artemis
mhm.
3, how many years is that? Is that like 6 years or so? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
It's going to be something like maybe 7. And I think to myself, wait a minute. When President Kennedy said, let's put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth, he said that in 1962. We didn't yet have a rocket that was capable of holding humans that didn't blow up on the launch pad. Okay.
Mhm.
In other words, he made that announcement before we had safe passage to space for humans. 7 years later, we're walking on the moon. So I'm still a little grumpy that we start the Artemis mission and maybe 7 years later we go from the first trip to the moon to the first landing of humans on the moon, because Artemis 2 will go to the moon. It's scheduled for
Mhm.
late, I think early 2025.
Yeah.
The launch date's been shifting and I haven't kept up with it, but
Mhm.
the crew has been selected and they're young enough so that however long the delay is, they'll still be young enough.
Yeah,
I
to
think they
go.
won't be old and retired and senior citizens before they go up. But
Mhm.
so things move faster back then, and I think
Yeah.
they move faster because we were quite compelled, feeling threatened by the Soviet Union because they were
Mhm.
making all these advances in space. And right now, our quote threat may be just simply China says they want to put some taikonauts on the moon, and maybe that spooked us a little, but
Mm.
not at the pace that we were spooked back in the 1960s.
Right. Yeah. Um, so kind of stemming off that, hopefully people can maybe kick it into gear a little bit, but what do you think the near future of space travel would look like if more people, say, invested in it or were
Well, it's
compelled
not
to
just
go?
people, but governments. I mean, people and companies generally don't do things that are expensive, dangerous, with no return on the investment. They
Mhm.
just don't. Obviously, they don't do it. But a government can do it. A government will do it for many reasons. They could do it for geopolitical reasons. So, for long term security reasons, they could do it for long term economic reasons. When Spain paid for Columbus's voyage, Columbus is not even Spanish, right?
Right.
So Italy said, "What do you want to do, Chris?" No, we're not paying for that. So he shops it around, and Spain says, "We'll pay," and find a shorter route to India. And so he thinks he hits India and calls everybody there Indians. That's kind of embarrassing. And
Mhm.
and until recently they were still called Indians, all because of Columbus's mistake. But regardless, the motivation there was partly hegemonistic because he was handed a satchel of flags and said, "Plant these wherever you land in the name of Spain." Okay,
Mhm.
so that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it was the economic convenience of going west to the Indies rather than east. So countries can do that, and have the motive to do it and the timeline to do it. But a corporation that has a quarterly report, an annual report, no. They'll ultimately do it once we figure out what the risks are, quantify the risks and the costs and
Mhm.
other uncertainties. Then you can come in and make a buck. That's what the Dutch East India Trading Company did. They weren't the first Europeans to the New World. They came after. once they
Mhm.
knew how long it would take and where they would go and what goods were there and how to trade them. So I would say to open our backyard, the solar system, to space exploration will require some combination of private enterprise and national motivations.
Mhm. So that kind of leads into my next question. Like, what are some of the pros and cons of private space companies?
I don't know what cons there would be. That's like
Mhm.
saying, what are the pros and cons of companies? Okay, there could be some cons. So some cons are they want to make money rather than make you safe. Okay, that's
Right.
that's true for any corporation doing business. All right, any
Mhm.
corporation that makes food, medicines, anything that interacts with our health and well-being. Disney World or Universal, you want the roller coaster to be safe. Okay, so in that sense, I don't think the risks are any worse than any other company interacting with people. We want to make sure they're safe. So that might
Mhm.
require some level of regulation because otherwise the company won't care. Typically, they don't care based on the
Right.
history of that exercise. So, other
Mhm.
than that, which is just what we care about in any company, companies that make airplanes, that make cars, and the like, I don't see any downside at all. And for
Okay.
corporations to participate, they will do what the governments did, but more cheaply, more efficiently, once the risks are quantified. And maybe it'll open up to us all. In the same way, I don't know how old you are, but in 1987, the movie Wall Street, actually, you could have
Mhm.
seen it later, but I saw it in real time because that's how old I am. There's a scene, 1987, Gecko, who's the rich, a-hole, basically.
Mhm.
He There's a scene where he's walking on the beach in the Hamptons, okay,
Mhm.
fancy place on Long Island in New York, and he's carrying a cell phone with him. And I remembered thinking, wow, I wish I was rich like him so I could just talk to someone on the phone while
Mhm.
I'm on the beach. Meanwhile, if you just look at that scene, this is one of these shoulder mounted cell phones.
Yeah.
It's the size of a cinder block, right?
Mhm.
And so what happens is, especially in the tech world, things that are expensive that only rich people have or have access to at the beginning typically ultimately become very inexpensive when they become a commodity. And
Mhm.
that's when the companies really make money. You don't make the big money selling expensive things to a few rich people. You make big money by selling cheaper things to everyone, right?
Mhm.
And so there you have it. So that's why Apple Computer is a bigger company than the biggest yacht company there ever was. You can make
Fair. Yeah.
one yacht per rich person, and you could probably make a good living making yachts, but you
Mhm.
won't be a trillionaire like the 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 market value of Apple Computer.
Mhm.
There's 6 billion smartphones in the world. It hit a
Yeah.
price point where basically everyone except homeless people owns a smartphone.
Pretty much. Yeah. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit. NASA's Perseverance rover is
Oh, let
currently
me add something to
searching.
that. I'm sorry. Let me add something.
Oh. Oh, sure.
So if we turn the solar system into our backyard, how wouldn't that be fun? We could have
Mhm.
tourist trips to the moon, the near side of the moon, the far side of the moon, science experiments to look for life on Mars, visit the comets. We want you. I don't know that you want to land on one, but maybe you can trail one through the solar system, right up
Mhm.
alongside of it. You can mine the natural resources and asteroids. Oh my gosh, that would
Mhm.
transform access to geopolitical access to rare elements on Earth's surface. Many rare Earth metals are common on asteroids.
Mhm.
So it would completely change the future of geopolitics if, in fact, the solar system were our backyard, possibly removing entirely an entire category of warfare. And those are
Yeah.
wars fought over limited access to limited resources.
Mhm. All right. So sort of stemming from like going to Mars and bringing things from space to Earth. NASA's Perseverance rover is currently searching for signs of ancient microbial life in rocks on Mars. When those rock cores are sent back to Earth in 2033, what do you think is the likelihood of them finding something?
I'm, I'm not a betting man, but maybe 50-50,
Yeah.
because every place we've ever found life, every place we've ever found liquid water on Earth, we have
Hmm.
found life. Even in the Dead Sea. All right. Well, who named it the Dead Sea? Well, ancient peoples named it the Dead Sea because there were no fishes in it. But if they had access to a microscope, which they didn't because it wasn't invented yet, they would see microbes there doing the backstroke. All right. The Dead Sea.
Yeah.
So every place we found liquid water, we found life. And we have excellent evidence that Mars once had liquid water. So if
Hmm.
life and water go together in the way that we think it does or should or could, then on Mars, searching places where liquid water once was, bringing it back so you can study it under a microscope with proper laboratory tools, rather than the makeshift tools that you shipped there on the rover
Hmm.
itself. So that's why you have this sample return mission, which is what they're called. Yeah, I give it 50-50.
Okay.
But
And
but
I do have
if
this.
there's no
Oh,
life, I'm okay with that. We have
yeah.
plenty of other places to look in the solar system.
Hmm. I do have to say, I think my favorite part of your book was the fact that when all the physicists went to Vegas, that the MGM lost money because none of them were betting.
That's why I
That
said I'm
made me
not quite a
chuckle.
betting person.
Yeah.
If you give me a moment to just retell that. Thanks for noticing that. So there's a whole
Mhm.
chapter there called um, Risk and Reward, which is just
Mhm.
the whole book are chapters, are subjects that we're all familiar with and have thought long and hard about, but I show you how differently they look through the lens of science literacy, and especially through the lens of a cosmic perspective. Well, one of
Mhm.
them is the public hardly knows probability and statistics. It's not a required class in kindergarten through 12. It's definitely not required in college. And so, plus, I think we're not wired for it. It's 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 odd to say that, and I don't want to believe it, but all the evidence points that it's true. We are
Mhm.
so bad at probability and statistics that entire industries have risen to exploit how bad we are at it. They're
Mhm.
called casinos. Okay. they, they ride the fact that you have no idea what you're doing out there. You'll
Mhm.
throw the dice hard, hoping that you'll get big numbers when it drops, and you'll throw it gently if you want small numbers. Like, yeah, really? You really doing that? Like, really? You're betting on 7 a whole bunch of times on the roulette table? Why? Oh, because it's due. Well, how do you know it's due? Well, the roulette table shows you the previous 10 rolls. They
Mhm.
show it. They feed you this misinformation. No, those rolls are accurate, but they're feeding our profound statistical ignorance,
Yeah.
because every roll has the same chance of hitting a 7 no matter what rolls went before. But we
Mhm.
don't think that, we don't feel that. And one year, the American Physical Society, we were going to have these are the Society of Physicists, we were going to have our annual conference in San Diego, but there was a hotel snafu and it was late
Mhm.
and it was hard to rebook. And the MGM Marina, now the MGM Grand, one of the biggest hotels in the world, said, "We'll take you. We got this." So thousands of physicists went to Vegas to the MGM Marina Hotel. And a week later, there was a headline: physicists in town, lowest casino take ever. so, so the physicists were told, never come back. We don't want you ever. So it's not that we knew the odds or anything, it's that none of us played. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, so that's why I said I'm not really a betting person in that sense.
Yeah, I'm not either so much. But on the chance that there is life in those rock samples, it kind of makes me think of the beginning of a science fiction movie where alien life comes to Earth and then, all hell breaks loose. So in your opinion, what are some of the films that get science really wrong, and then what are some of them that get science pretty accurate?
Well, to the beginning of your question, I think Michael Crichton's, of Jurassic Park fame,
Yep.
I think his first novel, maybe
Mhm.
was the Andromeda Strain, where there was a
Oh.
spacecraft that went out into orbit somewhere, and
Mhm.
some kind of bug ended up on it, and it came back to Earth, and it was killing people. And it was, as any quote good science fiction story unfolds, there's scientists doing something and something goes wrong, or
Mhm.
scientists warn authorities that something will go wrong and they just get ignored, right?
Right.
These are the instant plot for sci-fi films. I would say the Andromeda Strain was very well done. uh,
Mhm.
One of the few science fiction novels I read before I saw the movie, and it was very well done. He's a medical doctor, so there's a lot of good. He was trained as an MD, so there's a lot of excellent reference to the human physiology and how it might react or respond to a virus, or it wasn't a virus, but it was a bug of some kind that would
Mhm.
infect your body. So other stories, The Martian was excellent. That
Yeah.
one, uh, that might be the most scientifically accurate film ever made, and
Mhm.
I'm going to take partial credit for that. Okay, I don't mean to brag, but the author, Andy Weir, who's an engineer turned novelist, he told me on my podcast, Star Talk, he said,
Mhm.
Neil, because you always talk about movies, what they get right and wrong on Twitter. When I was writing this story, The Martian, I imagined you were looking over my shoulder. And I made sure, nope, Neil's going to tweet about that. I better redo that calculation. So I get whatever credit comes my way for the total accuracy of that film. Is brilliantly told, brilliantly thought up by Andy Weir, and it had a marquee director and marquee actors as well. So
Mhm.
I was obviously Hollywood was all in on that one. I thought that Contact, the movie based on Carl Sagan's book, was
Mhm.
a big part of that was the public's reaction to the discovery of intelligent life in the universe. And I thought they put some very careful thought into that, because that's half of what we're going to have to confront. One is the aliens, and the other is people reacting to the knowledge that there's aliens. What's that going to be
Mhm.
like? So, as a scientist in the public eye, I think long and hard about how the public reacts to information that they're learning, that they want to know, or that they fear. It
Mhm.
matters how I communicate.
Yeah. Um, so kinda going off of Twitter, so in your book, you often discuss some of the things you put on Twitter and people's reactions to them. Um, we at
Oh,
Discover
wait, you
really
can't leave
enjoy.
out the fact that I slipped in a few tweets that still sit in my forbidden Twitter file.
Yes,
These are
the forbidden Twitter file,
yeah,
yeah.
these are tweets I said, no, can't post that. The people
Yeah.
that's nope, that'll just start fights. No, no. By the way, all of it is objectively true, but
Mhm.
needlessly confrontational, and I just leave it in the forbidden file. But I
Maybe it
do
could.
give people a peek at a couple of them. Yes.
Yeah, it could be your next book maybe, just,
No,
like,
no,
opening the
no. I
forbidden
want to
Twitter
start World
file.
War III. Yeah.
Um, anyway, at Discover, we love your tweets, and some of your tweets, like, on the plausibility of movies and comic book tropes, they're often criticized and referred to as downers or sucking the fun out of everything. For example, when you posted, "Actually, Bruce Banner would have died within days from organ failure." What do you think of these types of responses and critiques, and what's running through your mind when you're tweeting stuff like this?
Okay, just to catch people up on who Bruce Banner is and why he would have died of organ failure. He's the
Yeah.
medical doctor exposed to gamma rays, which then um, they mutated his DNA so that when he gets angry, he becomes big green and turns into the Hulk.
Mhm.
And generally, when you're exposed to gamma rays, it kills you. It will create uh, it will create it will distort your DNA. But generally, when that happens, you die from it. All right. Rarely
Mhm.
is there a mutation. It can and does happen, but it's just extremely rare. Most of the time, you just die. So I said that,
Right.
but it's just in case people want to know. If you don't want to
Yeah.
know, okay, I guess I can just stay silent. But I will tell you that the X-Men, which is also about genetic mutations, those people just simply born with those mutations. That's more
Mhm.
plausible than standing in front of gamma rays and turning into the Hulk. So I'm just suggesting that if the authors and the storytellers knew more science, you could tell a deeper story. You could tell a
Right.
more authentic story. And I'm a big fan of what Mark Twain has said. First, get your facts straight,
Mhm.
then distort them at your leisure.
I love Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Um, did you happen to watch The Last of Us at all recently? The
No,
TV
but
show?
and it's on my list. I can't binge
Okay.
I gotta
You're busy,
live.
I get it. You gotta live.
I gotta like eat and like sleep and run a planetarium
Mhm.
and tweet. But
And
The Last of Us
tweet.
it's on my list, and
Okay.
I'm charmed and intrigued by the
Mhm.
role that fungus plays in the storytelling. So that would be someone who had some extra knowledge about this entire branch of uh, the tree of life. When I grew up, there was
Mhm.
like plant kingdom and animal kingdom. That's it, right? Now we got
Right.
like the whole fungus kingdom, and I'm glad
Yeah.
somebody's running with that. So I can't wait to see
Yeah.
it, and then surely we'll have some comments on it. But based on what people have told me, I expect to say only nice things about it.
Mhm. I'm interested to hear what you have to say, especially after you mentioned in your book how closely related, human DNA and fungus DNA
Oh
is.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
So
This is. I mean, somebody must have known that to written this story as they have. And
mhm.
I'll repeat that. So that chapter is in Body and Mind. That
Mhm.
appears in the Body and Mind chapter, I think, where again it's what does your body and your mind look like through the lens of science. So so if you look at the tree of life and all its connectivity, and you trace animal life back into the tree of life, trace
Mhm.
fungal life back into the tree of life, there's a point where you can find the common ancestor between the two of us.
Mhm.
Okay. There's a point where that common ancestor split, and one branch became all animals, humans included, and one branch became all fungi, mushrooms included. Okay.
Mhm.
Before that split was its common ancestor with green plants, which means humans and portobello mushrooms are more genetically alike than
Mhm.
either of us are to green plants.
Which
Just
is a
pause and think
yeah.
about that. And then I thought, well, maybe, when you bite into a mushroom, what's an adjective people often use for it?
It's meaty.
Meaty. That's right.
Mhm.
So maybe in a way, we're biting into ourselves, right? You bite your
Yeah,
finger, that's kind of like the texture of a portobello mushroom.
of a mushroom.
And
Mhm.
and also mushrooms have no trouble growing on and in your body. Okay.
Oof.
Yeast
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
our fungus. When I say mushroom, fungus. Yeast, the ringworm. You can have skin rashes that are
Mhm.
fungal related. That's where you have antifungal creams. Athlete's feet. All right. All of this.
Mhm.
So the mushrooms and we go way back. We got long history together, and it will continue into the future.
Yeah. Kind of stemming off the tree of life. In the news recently, there's a lot of talk about bringing back extinct animals such as the dodo and the woolly mammoth. Do you think that's something that's actually possible?
Oh yeah, I don't see why not. Once we fully understand DNA and
Mhm.
what splices within it account for what properties of the animal. So, for example, with the more recently extinct species, we have their DNA, if I
Mhm.
understand correctly. So mammoths sort of melting out of a receding glacier, plenty of receding glaciers today, and other
Yeah.
sort of life forms. The plus the dodo that went extinct like in memory. Well, almost. I mean,
Mhm.
110 10, 20 years ago. And whenever that was, we whole people are existing with cities and things. It's not cavemen, okay?
Right. Yeah.
We're around with newspapers and books and technology when the dodo went extinct. Not so much when the mammoth went extinct. So maybe it's out of guilt that we want to bring
Hmm.
the dodo back, okay? Because I think we had something to do with that. The
Yeah.
mammoth, I don't know if they were hunted to extinction by our cave ancestors, but it seems to me that would be a diabolical thing to do for the mammoth.
Yeah.
If you want to bring up the mammoth, the woolly mammoth thrived during what part of Earth history? You tell me.
The Ice Age.
The Ice Age. Okay. So now we want to bring it back just in time for global warming? That ain't right.
Yeah. It's kind of a slap in the face.
That's not fair. No, come on now. So, but it's I've spoken with whatever is the branch of biology who wants to bring these life forms back. I host a panel every year on sort of frontier science subjects. It's called the
Hmm.
Isaac Asimov panel debate. And 5 years ago, you can find it online, Asimov panel debate. Just search that with my name. Use
Okay.
my middle name in case Mike Tyson has done anything like that. I don't know what the tightest search you can get. But in there, one of them was an entire conversation about artificially creating life, either life
Hmm.
that has never existed before or bringing back to life that has gone extinct. Point is, the mammoth lived in an ecosystem that it thrived on.
Hmm.
To bring back just the animal and not the ecosystem is itself not really thinking it through.
Right.
And of course, in the limit, you get a Jurassic Park, a
Yeah.
second novel by Michael Crichton in this conversation,
Hmm.
where once again things go wrong.
Yep.
And yeah, so one little thing about I have dinosaur colleagues here at the American
Oh.
Museum of Natural History. Apparently,
Hmm.
one of the world's best supplies of insects in amber is in New Jersey. Okay.
Oh.
Whereas at the beginning of Jurassic Park, there's like a helicopter ride going into Bolivia, wherever, I don't know where they went, South
Yeah.
America, in the jungle, and the thing, and they could have just taken the George
Gone to
Washington
New
Bridge
Jersey.
across to New Jersey and gotten
That's
whatever amber they needed to suck out the DNA from the mosquitoes.
Yeah, that's probably the most unbelievable part of the movie is that they had to go all the way to South America for it. Um, all right. So your latest book, Starry Messenger, uses scientific methods and principles to explore real-world issues like veganism, gender and identity, color and race, and even our legal system. Why did you feel it was important to view those issues through a scientific lens? And what can such an approach teach us?
Well, nobody else was. And I see it that way every day. I
Mhm.
see people say things, do things, arrive at conclusions, dig their heels in with an opinion, and half the time I'm like the dog listening to a high pitched whistle. I'm just like, huh? Like
Mhm.
what? Like
What?
how you really think that? What? Why? What? Oh, Mercury's in retrograde, so therefore, what? How? What? The
Mhm.
comet's coming, so that means the end of the world is it. What? How? What?
Mhm.
What? You're a vegetarian because you don't want to kill animals. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
trap mice in a humane mousetrap. That's very noble of you. But then you release it into the wild, where it'll be eaten within months by owls and hawks and all manner of woodland predators. You just
Mhm.
cut short the life expectancy of that mouse. Oh, animal lover that you are. You know what the best thing to do is for that mouse? Leave it in your basement. It will live
Mhm.
6 years in the comfort and warmth of your basement. So don't
Yeah.
tell me you're interested in the life of animals, okay,
Mhm.
with your humane mousetrap. Because the average life expectancy of a mouse in the wild is between 9 and 18 months, a year and a half. And in
Right.
captivity, they can live many years, up to 6 years. So when I see people making strongly held decisions, I just say, what? Why? The people who eat tuna, they only get line caught tuna.
Mhm.
Well, why? Well, because when they're net caught, you'll occasionally drag a dolphin with you. And dolphins are air breathers, and so they suffocate and you end up killing a dolphin. You don't want to kill a dolphin unnecessarily. Okay.
Right.
So so you buy line caught tuna. But I'm saying, okay, but what about the tuna? You're
Yeah.
killing the tuna. Both tuna and dolphins swim in the ocean, and you're
Mhm.
perfectly fine slaughtering tuna, but not the dolphin. Oh, so
Right.
you have carved out a section in the tree of life where the dolphin is a mammal. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. So you don't want to kill the mammal. Really? But you're eating a hamburger while you're telling me this. I checked. Burger
Right.
meat came from a cow, and the cow is a mammal. Okay.
Mhm.
Or you're enjoying your morning bacon from a pig, which is also a mammal, or a lamb, or a goat. Okay. So it can't be a mammal. Oh, it's the size of the brain that you like. So again, you're saying we have a brain and they have a brain
Mhm.
and we have big brains, so we want to protect the big brains.
Right.
And so, okay, um, is that really why? You know who has the biggest brain size relative to their body weight of all animals? Are
Is
certain
it
species of ants.
Oh.
You've looked at ants up close. They got huge heads. There's like a
Mhm.
whole
They do,
section of their
yeah.
body is just their head. There's some ants where where their brain is like 15% of their body weight, whereas
Oh
with
my gosh.
humans it's down in the low single digits. So, but you're stepping on ants all the time. And by the way, ants do
Mhm.
very busy things. They do things it's like, what? They're carrying a leaf, they're bringing it, and we're going to make a thing, and they're going to make a bridge across the thing. They're going to be an ant tunnel. And so don't tell me they're not smart. Don't tell me they
Right.
can't figure stuff out. Don't tell me that. All right. They got brains, but you don't care about them. You don't watch where
Mhm.
you step, so you don't step on the ant. So I'm just trying to observe how people think. And by the way, I don't care what you do. The book is not a treatise on opinions. Sorry, it's not a book of opinions. It's a book
Mhm.
of observations of your opinions that you might be holding strongly and maybe you didn't really think it through as
Right.
deeply as you could have or should have. That's what the book is. And every one of those topics lends itself to that kind of analysis.
Mhm.
So it's an offering to whoever wants to see the world a little differently.
Yeah, and I definitely, I do see the world a little differently now after reading it, so
Really? Okay. Well,
I
thank you.
yeah.
You didn't have
Mhm.
to say that. Dude, thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
no, it's true. Like, I really just thought it was really interesting overall, so I enjoyed it. Um, some of my wrap-up questions, the preface to your book describes it as a wake-up call to civilization. Was there a moment in your career as an astrophysicist where you woke up to a more global cosmic way of looking at things?
Yeah, when I was 13. That's when I woke up. Okay. That's when I first saw a full grown adult in the street holding up a sign saying the comet is coming, the end of the world is near, repent.
Mhm.
This is a comet he's never seen because it was only at the time visible through telescopes, but it was on its way it had great promise to be a beautiful comet in the holiday uh, Christmas, New Year's skies. It turns out it didn't become as bright as everyone had hoped or expected, but
Mhm.
to be a 13-year-old kid, brand new teenager, who had some science literacy going for me because I was interested since I was 9, was reading science books and things, and
Mhm.
to watch a full-grown adult, and this is a demographic who runs the world. Adults create legislation and laws and they run for office and they wield power and resources and they run corporations. And one among them is standing in a street with a placard. I was
Mhm.
so disappointed. And I thought to myself, what's wrong here? And from that moment till the publication date of that book, till the date I submitted the manuscript, I was collecting my observations of
Mhm.
the world, hoping that one day I would be able to put it in some kind of context, some kind of way to enjoy learning what maybe you should have known before you held that strong opinion.
Yeah.
And so that's why if the chapters in the book, color and race, gender and identity, mind and body, life and death, all
Mhm.
of these topics lend themselves to a new lens to peer through so that you'll think about them. My goal was you think about them as you never did before.
Yeah. Cool. So my final question, just because I myself am, and a lot of people here at Discover Magazine are, we're really big fans of Carl Sagan, and we just want to know, like, what were some of like the most insightful things you learned from him?
So a couple of things. It's a great question, and oddly, I've never been asked that. So
Oh, really?
thanks.
Ever?
Yeah, yeah, never been asked that. So
Oh.
let me just clarify something. He's commonly referenced as my mentor, and
Mhm.
but in the traditional understanding of that word, that's not true. The
Right.
traditional understanding of a mentor is someone you consult with frequently, and they guide you through important key moments or decision points in your career and in your life. So
Mhm.
that was not the case. In fact, I was probably in his presence 4 times in my life.
Mhm.
I can probably count them. Let me see, one, two, three, yeah, 4 times in my life. So it's
Mhm.
not about mentor in the traditional sense. Let me say that you can mentor someone without even ever having met them. You
Mhm.
can mentor them by example, provided the mentee is open and receptive of seeking out where there's an example that they might want to emulate. So for me, one of my greatest influential moments was in this particular case, we were together, my first time meeting him, and he had
Mhm.
written a letter to me to invite me up to Cornell. I was in high school to tour Cornell to see if I can decide whether I wanted to attend. I did
Yeah.
not know that the admissions office had sent my application to him for his comment because my application was dripping with the universe. Because again, I was into it
Mhm.
since I was 9. It was 8 years running at age 17, uh, going to, ready for the universe. Did I do my math right there? 17, 8, 25. Anyhow, so nearly half my life. So
Mhm.
he writes me a personal letter, invites me to Cornell. And he hadn't done Cosmos yet, but he was already famous. He had
Yeah.
best-selling book on the Tonight Show. Then a highly criticized step for a scientist, by the way.
Mhm.
You're going to be on a comedic talk show and not on a documentary. What kind of scientist are you? All right.
Yeah.
So he was very uh, uh, forward thinking in this regard, because after he made these public appearances, members of Congress would say in response to their electorate, "Oh, you want to explore space? Isn't that what Carl Sagan said on TV the other day? Yeah, so let's do that." All tide waters rose for all boats
Mhm.
after after his visibility became widespread. But anyhow, why is he spending this much time with me? We just met. I don't know him. I'm 17. He's a full-grown famous person, and I swore after that encounter that any future occasion to serve as a to advise or to offer helpful comments to a student, that no matter how famous I became, I would give time to the student the way Carl Sagan gave time to me.
Yeah.
And to this day, I do that as best as I can. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
limit to the hours in a day, until I can master relativity. There's a limit, but I joke about it. I'll say, I see a student at the door and I say, Barack, I got to call you back. Uh, I got a student that, I joke about that. Maybe I'd
Mhm.
still talk to the president, but that's the sense of this. So for
Yeah.
me, that was the most everlasting. And another one was his near infinite patience,
Mhm.
speaking to people who may have twisted, tangled mental pathways of thought. And he would find ways to disentangle the Gordian knot that
Yeah.
was brain wiring. And I don't know that I even have that much patience as I've seen him exhibit. but it's something to aspire to. Those two,
Mhm.
above all else, I think, are the most influential on me as a professional educator.
Well, Neil, those are all the questions that I had for you today. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to speak with you.